which is, can business really be a force for good? And it's a bit of a rhetorical question, so I thought we'd begin by maybe seeing what you think. Do you think business can be a force for good?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there are a few examples that would support that, but as a percentage of business in general, I would think it's very small.
Yeah. Should business be a force for good?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've been working for Weleda for 12 years, and I think I've got a handle on what the difference is and what we can do to make a difference. So I think what I'll do, if it's okay, is tell you a bit about my experience of working for Weleda, and then reflect that back into my experience of working for companies that weren't Weleda. And then maybe we could have a talk about what we could do to see how we can affect change. Because I think we need to become much more activist. Because I think just waiting for something to happen is not going to happen, and it's certainly not going to happen fast enough. So if we think about the climate crisis that we have at the moment, and you think about how businesses operate or how we live, then we, as a business, have just by very nature of what we do, we pump out lots of carbon. So I'm talking we generally, and I'll talk to you specifically about Weleda. And we as consumers pump out a lot of carbon. And of course that is heating up the atmosphere, it's polluting the atmosphere, and we've got the greenhouse gas effect. But we also pump out, and particularly with beauty products, particularly with products that we use on our skins, we also pollute our watercourses. And I haven't even got onto plastic packaging, and we've all seen the impact from 2 years ago, David Attenborough's Blue Planet, and that's very much in our consciousness. And if we are, how we grow our food, and particularly how, for us, how we grow our herbs, we grow them out of soil. And the soil is what we, as the human race, live on. If you think about soil around the globe, this is where we get our food from. And what we do in conventional farming is we put a lot of chemicals in the soil, particularly nitrogen, phosphates, but also glyphosate and weed killers and so on. And we're poisoning the soil. So the question that I would ask is, if business is going to be a force for good, the first thing we need to do is become at least carbon neutral, if not carbon positive, in terms of what we're pumping out into the atmosphere. The second thing we need to do is be very responsible for what goes into our products, particularly in beauty, because we don't want to pollute the watercourses. And we also have to be mindful of how much water that we're using, because the beauty industry particularly uses a massive amount of water. And then the third thing is, particularly the way we grow our crops, we need to be very mindful of the soil, and we should be making sure the soil is healthy and not depleted. And in some parts of the world, they're talking about, particularly in America, talking about only 60 harvests left being available. In the UK, it's slightly better, it's only 100. So we've got to do something about it, and we've got to do something about it really quickly. And I think it is absolutely down to us to do something, because I think waiting for businesses or government to legislate, it's not going to happen because of one thing, and that thing is called money. And with money comes power and influence. So what I've learnt at Weleda is that the way you get up in the morning and you do business, so the way I get up and I come to work and I do my job, it used to be really easy for me. I used to get up, go to work, and virtually every decision I made was made on how much money can we make. In Weleda we don't do that. We try and balance what has become known as people, planet and profit, and it's really, really difficult. And very often the decisions that we make, we don't actually know whether we've made the right decision. So very often you're just having to kind of lean in and listen and think, this just feels like the right decision. Is it right for us as human beings? Is it right for nature and the planet? And is it going to be profitable? And I guess the first thing to say that I've learnt at Weleda is that if you're not profitable, you're not very sustainable and you're not going to be around for very long. It's really crucial, and a lot of green organisations forget that. A lot of charities forget that. It's super, super, super important that you're profitable. And then when you have some money, you can then start making some really great choices about how you're going to do things. So for example, at Weleda we've invested very heavily in solar panels for all of our manufacturing plants, got massive roofs. So we're now 100%, we generate 100% of our energy needed for production, which is great, really great. The next thing to think about is, in talking about the planet, is looking at a whole product life cycle. And this is where it gets really hard. It's really difficult. And I'll give you a really good example of something that we've experienced recently. And that is packaging. So there's a myth at the moment that everything plastic is bad. Now, everything plastic is bad if you throw plastic in the bin, or it goes off to be recycled and it ends up in the oceans. Absolutely. But plastic in itself is actually a really great material if we treat it with the respect that it needs. And there are many things that we do today using plastic that we wouldn't be able to, if plastic didn't exist, we wouldn't have things like, valves in heart bypasses, in, all sorts of medicine and so on. So at Weleda we did a lot of research work. We've been doing a lot of research work over the last 10 years to look at our packaging, because I think most of you might know a lot of our packaging is in glass, those lovely old-fashioned glass bottles, and they're really heavy. And we get most of the products that come in the glass bottles, so something like the oils, our essential oils, our massage oils we've been making for nearly 100 years. And they're made in Germany, and we're now, we sell Weleda in 52 countries around the world. So we transport a lot of product in a lot of glass, and that is very heavy, and our carbon footprint is way bigger than it should be. We also have put product in a lot of aluminium tubes. So if you use toothpaste, or if you use skin food, whatever, and any of our facial skincare range, you'll notice that it comes in an aluminium tube, which is, aluminium is probably the easiest material to recycle, so that's great, but actually the mining of aluminium is really bad. It's really, really bad for the planet. It causes a huge amount of pollution. And the very fact that we cannot use recycled aluminium for a number of reasons, hygiene reasons and so on, for our products, means that we're using pristine aluminium, so freshly mined aluminium, in every single product, every single tube, which is great. So we decided about 5 years ago that we would switch into plastic. It took us an awful long time to do it, I have to say, because we have to make sure that the product is kept in the best possible quality. So for those of you that are big skin food fans, you'll notice that the new skin food comes in a laminate tube, which isn't recyclable in the UK. So that's a really hard decision to make, frankly. Do we carry on putting it in aluminium, which can be recycled, but actually when we've done the full life cycle analysis, it is bad? Or do we switch into plastic, which is much, much lighter, it's much easier to transport around the world, and also in most countries, not in the UK, well, in some parts of the UK, but not across the whole of the UK. It's really easy to recycle, and to recycle plastic versus glass or aluminium takes an awful lot less energy, and so on. So these are the kind of things that when you are thinking about, can business be a force for good, it's very complicated and it's really hard, and sometimes you just have to make the best worst decision. And that's difficult, really difficult. The other thing that I've discovered is this thing called fairness of pay. So when we're a company founded by Rudolf Steiner, an Austrian philosopher. So we're very much founded on a philosophy. We have very, very strong values. And Steiner was prolific in his work. He did a lot of talks. Most people might have heard of Waldorf Steiner's schools. Equally, if you've heard of organic farming, then that's come out of Steiner's work with biodynamics, and obviously we've got the latest in the Biodynamic Association here with us today. And biodynamics is like super organic. So Steiner would give lots of talks. He wrote about 30 books. He gave about 6,000 lectures to educationists, talking about the way children could learn, the way we were mechanising schools and our education system, the way we were industrialising farming around the world. And he gave lectures. He gave lectures in medicine, and which led on to the founding of Weleda. And one of the pieces of work that he did, and he did it just after the First World War, is looking at how we in social communities or businesses or whatever could live or could operate in a more ethical way. And he effectively talked about there's the legal side, there's people side, there's planet side. So it became known as what we know as people, planet, and profit. So these three pillars of how you operate. And I think that's amazing. So I came to Weleda not knowing any of this, and our business practices, I was fascinated by the way we make decisions and the way we look at our strategy and the way we look very, very long term. And we apply this principle on value. So Steiner said in a value chain, if you have 10 interactions on a value chain and you create £10 of value, then each interaction should get £1 of that value, and it should be equal. And of course that's not the system we live in. If you go to Boots and you say, got a great product, would you like to buy it, put it on your shelf, they will be expecting to be making about 70% of what you buy from Boots as their profit, or as their gross profit. So this notion of equal value is one that we're not really used to because of the way our businesses are set up. Because our businesses in general are set up to make money by doing something, not to do something and then as a byproduct of that to make some money. So with Weleda, what I discovered, and my background is, I come from a farming background, is that we start with the farmers. And we understand that without a really great supply of the best quality ingredient, then we haven't got a business. So we work in partnership, and today we have about 50 of projects or partnerships set up around the world, where farmers grow the ingredients that we need. And very often these projects are in very remote parts of the world. I was blessed to go to see one of them last year in Moldova. And Moldova voted for independence in 1992. It was part of the Soviet Union. And by doing that, they completely lost, all the farmers in the country completely lost their market because it was part of the internal Soviet marketplace for essential oils. So what occurred in Moldova is that we were approached by an amazing British man called Bob Hetherington, who used to work for the World Bank. He'd retired, and he wanted to do something in Moldova. He'd spent a lot of time there with his Moldovan associates from the World Bank. And he came to Weleda and said, would you be interested in lavender oil if we were able to get these farms back into growing lavender? Because they'd gone from growing a lot of crops for essential oils back into subsistence farming. And we said, yes, great. And that was in 2003. So whiz forward to 2019, that project has, and we worked in project, it was a partnership project. So we put in our time for free, teaching the villagers how to switch from just run-of-the-mill farming into organic, and then now switching into organic farming. They went from being our 7th supplier down to they are now our number 1 supplier. We employ about 200, or the project rather, employs about 200 people from 2 villages on the Ukraine border. And we also have a plant nursery where we grow 1 million lavender plants every year, and they're given out for free to any of the farmers that want, and then we will teach them how to switch their farming into organic and, as I say, into biodynamic. And that to me is a really good example of where we put the quality of the ingredient and doing the right thing first. When I was there, what I didn't know was actually, I didn't really understand our business practices, because I was told how grateful everybody was to Weleda. Because in 2012 we had that, if you remember, we had tremendous ice and frosts for about 6-8 weeks. It's quite late, and what that did was it wiped out all of the lavender. I think 90% of the lavender across their fields was completely wiped out. And our sourcing team, led by an amazing chap called Baz Schneiders, he went and effectively bought the crop even though there wasn't one that year to keep them going. And without that, the whole project would have failed. So that to me says that you can do this, you really can, but you need a lot of foresight, and you need to be in true partnership and understand that partnership is it's like getting a dog, it's for life. You need to work together and have respect for each other, and have dialogue. And sometimes that dialogue can be very candid, it can be quite challenging, because we're just switching now, say, from organic into biodynamic. We have to, because the other thing that Weleda has just done a piece of work on is true cost accounting. Now, true cost accounting is there's two things that we need to bring in, and we as consumers need to really be very mindful as to where we're spending our money. And those two things are true cost accounting, so we're looking at the total cost of the product that we're buying, not just how much it's cost to grow, but also, for example, if you're buying, say, a beauty product in my world, what's the cost of those ingredients going into the watercourses? So something like a foaming agent, sodium lauryl sulfate, makes bubbles, it doesn't biodegrade in the watercourse. There is a cost to that. So all you're using foaming agents in your shampoos or in your toothpastes, there is a cost to cleaning up the water that is going down the drain. There is a cost to managing the packaging at the end of its life. So we need true cost accounting, and we use true cost accounting to look at the products that came out of two of the crops. So we just picked two, and we want to move now completely into true cost accounting. The first one that we've looked at was calendula. So for those of you that had a wander around, have you seen our calendula fields over there? Beautiful orange, absolutely gorgeous. So we looked at what the carbon footprint was of our calendula crop, and we found out that it's carbon positive. We are locking so much carbon back in the soil that, despite offsetting the carbon, as products are travelling around the world, and calendula goes into our biggest selling products, our baby range, which is it's biggest selling nappy change cream in the world. It's actually still positive. It's still carbon positive. We also did the same for pomegranate, and we realised that it's not quite positive yet, but if we just changed how we do the distillation and the journey time of the distillation, then it could become carbon positive. So that's fantastic news. Imagine if we can now invest our money in doing much more of these farming projects with biodynamic farming, then all of our raw materials will be carbon positive. And our aim is to become carbon positive as fast as we possibly can. Now, IKEA I don't know if you know, but IKEA have just made a big announcement that they want to be I think it's carbon neutral by 2030. But that, for me, is a really great way of having a very responsible business. So the two things I know about is, one is true cost accounting and taking responsibility for everything in the product and how it's produced. And the second one is where your money comes from. Because if you want to set up a business, you've got a great idea. I've got a friend at the moment who runs an organic hair care brand, and they want to expand. But depending on who you go to for money, there is a price to pay for that money. So we need to tap into people who, or organisations who see long-term profit, not short-term profit. And we need to tap into organisations and banks that are looking at the positive benefits of a business, not just shareholder value. We shouldn't just be having to maximise our profits at the cost of the planet. And that's where we are at the moment. So what I've learned at Weleda is that business can be a force for good, but it's not easy at all. The way we're currently structured in terms of our rules and our laws and our accounting mitigate against that. The way funding is structured mitigates against that, although there are places you can go to funding, places like Triodos Bank, which is an ethical bank, but it is really difficult. And so I think what I would say is that now is the time for us to be much more enlightened and much more activist. I'll pose the question, are you a consumer or are you a citizen? And can you really be both? And I think you can be, but I think we have to really question how we're spending our money and what we're spending it on, and holding the people that we're buying products or services from to account, and asking them difficult questions like, do you follow a true cost accounting model? Where is your money coming from? And when I spend money with you, the profit that you're making, and you have to make profit, where does that profit go back into? What price are you paying your farmers if it's food or if it's natural organic cosmetics and medicines? And be much more challenging, and particularly, the likes of our retail structure in the UK. I had a very interesting discussion with River Ford. Does everybody know River Ford? The organic veg box company. And we were talking to them about whether they discount their boxes and whether there were, incentives. And they said, no, absolutely not. Because that's not the right thing to do for the planet. That is not ethical. So when we see, Holland and Barrett with their penny sales, or Boots with their 3 for 2s, it's about generating consumerism, and it's not paying a proper price. So yes, I think business can be a force for good, but it's not easy, and I think it starts with us here.
It's very much like organic food, isn't it? You've got to be willing to pay for the well-produced item in the first place, and if not, then you'll go to the lesser supermarkets or wherever you want to go to and buy a product which hasn't been produced in a better way.
Yeah. And only 4% of all farmland in the UK is farmed organically. And I think that it's one of those things that if we all bought organic milk, maybe, and I know a lot of people can't afford to, but just maybe one week in 4, that then pushes the demand up, and if the demand is there, farmland will be converted. But it is very, very difficult, and I would say I think we just have to stop consuming as much, and when we are going to buy something, we really do our homework and we make very considered choices, and I think that's going to take quite a big lifestyle shift. Yeah.